changes to the judging and scoring criteria as of this morning. Pretty impressive. The Association of Boxing Commissions approved a package of rule changes Tuesday morning that amount to the greatest alterations to MMA's unified rules since their inception. I'm going to go ahead and read some of these changes. And some of it really, they've made a couple of rule changes, but the most definitive were in judging criteria and scoring. So let's take a look at this. And then you guys give me a call with your opinions. Let me see. You let me know. Do you think this is better? Or do you think it really doesn't matter? 844-796-7874, 844-SXM-RUSH. All right. Judging criteria scoring. The following is the proposed update to the MMA judging criteria. This criterion will work extremely well with the current 10-point must system of numeric scoring and will also work very well if some form of numerical half-point scoring system becomes implemented in the future. Proposed judging criterion and definitions. Evolve the mixed martial arts judging criteria. Simplify the criterion to focus on the result of the action versus the action of itself. So let me repeat that. Focus on the result of the action versus the action itself. So a takedown doesn't necessarily do any damage or cause an effect, right? What was the result of it? It needs to be stated that criteria is used to be specific order and may not move from one criterion to another without proper criterion being 100% even in the judge's assessment. In other words, effective striking grappling will render the high majority of rendered assessments. Effective aggressiveness is a plan B and should not be considered unless the judge does not see any advantage in the effective striking and grappling realm. Cage ring control plan C should only be needed when all other criterion are 100% even for both competitors. This will be an extremely rare occurrence. Effective aggressiveness and fighting area control are backup plans, should the effective striking and grappling be 100% equal for both competitors. Interesting. Criteria may not be mixed and matched to assess the result. Number 1, effective striking grappling. Effective striking is judged by determining the impact or damage of legal strikes landed by a contestant solely based on the results of such legal strikes. Effective grappling is assessed by the successful executions and an impactful damaging result coming from takedowns, submission attempts, achieving an advantageous position, and reversals. Top and bottom position fighters are assessed more on the impactful damage result of their actions more so than their position. There you have it. That last portion, top and bottom fighters, the impact, let's see, that's the damaging result of their actions more so than their positions. I love that. You can go back in fights. You know, we had Carlos Condit on last week, his fight with Johnny Hendricks. He was on the ground out striking Johnny Hendricks, hitting him with elbows, cutting him, and lost the fight. That's a fight when I go back and I watch it, and if I look at this judging criteria, I think that fight scored differently. I think Carlos Condit wins that fight. When you go look at a fight, Brian Ortega, how am I forgetting his name? 2 fights ago, he's on bottom, slicing his opponent up in a phenomenal performance. He was winning the fight despite being on his back, but we've seen so many times that fighters, that doesn't happen, that the fighter on top gets the round. Very, very annoying when things like that take place. And I think that this criteria, hopefully, now it's not going to get passed in every single state. They've all got their own legislations, and some of them will go straight through. Hopefully it happens faster. Thiago Tavares is the name of the fighter. When Brian Ortega, you go back and watch that fight, when he's taking on Thiago Tavares had the wrestling advantage, continually took him down. But man, Ortega's going for submission to submission, hitting him with back fists, hitting him with elbows, cutting him up, doing tremendous amount of damage, having a big result in that. You know, you got to give those rounds to him. So personally, I like the changes. Let me know if you guys like them, don't like them, could care less, don't think they'll matter. You know, we'll rap about it. 844-796-7874. But I like the fact that we can evolve here, that we can change some things. Let's see here. Number 2, effective aggressiveness, aggressively making attempts to finish the fight. The key term here is effective. Chasing around an opponent with no result, impact, or damage should not render in the judge's assessments. I love that. Effective aggressiveness is only to be assessed if effective striking and grappling is 100% equal for both competitors. Fighting area control. Number 3, fighting area control is assessed by determining who is dictating the pace, place, and position of the bout. There you have it. I like it. So number 1 criteria, effective striking and grappling. Who's landing punches, who's dominating the positions, who's taking the guy down. After that, effective aggressiveness. Aggressively making attempts to finish the fight. The key term is effective. I like that words mean things. Coming from a Marine Corps background, that's something you hear all the time in the infantry. Words mean things. When you're an officer giving orders, words mean things. You can't mince words. You've got to be very clear on what you're giving. I like this. I think they're being much more clear for these judges here to give them realistic views on how to judge these fights and understand what's going on. Because I'll tell you what, one of the things I've said several times, when you sit cage side, as I did this weekend, I sat behind Mike Goldberg and Joe Rogan. There's a corner that does does impact my vision of the fight. The other thing, and I learned this in the first card I ever called, I was calling the Phil Davis-Lyoto Machida fight. And I remember thinking Lyoto Machida won that fight. I thought he was going to win the fight, thought he was going to get it, and then Phil Davis won the decision. And people criticized me for it, said, look, I called the fight like it was a fight that Machida won. When you watch the fight through the fence, when an opponent is throwing a combination and they're moving away from you, you can't tell if the punches land. Same thing if the guy's backing up. If the fight's happening on a straight line right in front of you, it's really difficult to see unless you have it in a profile, unless you're seeing it from the side and you could visually see whether those strikes land or not. And that was a very close fight. I could watch that back and still think maybe Machida won or Phil Davis won. But one of the things that Phil talked to me about the very next day was, look, a lot of the punches he was throwing, he wasn't landing. You can't score the fight for him just because he's throwing and hitting air. And that brings up a good point. I think that this verbiage does a great job at evolving the judging criteria. I think it's definitely a step further. I do question still though, the position of these judges. I want them in the back. I don't think they should hear crowd noise. They shouldn't hear me. When I'm talking about the fight, they should just be watching the fight. You get the best angle from watching on TV. At all times, they are always working. That director in the truck is always working to get you the angle where you can see, is the choke in there? Is the fighter hurt? Are they breathing heavy? Are they tired? Are these punches landing? Are these kicks landing? Are they passing the guard effectively? If you're on a different angle, you may not even see that the fighter just passed a half guard. It may still look like he's still in the guard because you can't tell. And when you look at this judging criteria, if all other things are equal, that makes a difference. Positional control, advancing position, doing things in your view to finish the fight. If a guy's going for a Kimura out of half guard, and you're sitting on the other side of him, you may not see that he has the Kimura grip and that he's working for it. You may not be awarding him appropriately for what he's trying to do from that position. So I still think that is the future. Get the judges away from octagon side. Not here in the crowd, because let me tell you something, when you go to Brazil or you go to Ireland, you go to Scotland and the hometown guy is fighting, every time they land a punch or throw a kick, the crowd goes nuts. It impacts you. It influences you. We're all human beings. We're flawed. We are not perfect. So that's the next step I'd like to see. I'd like to see those judges in a back room, noise canceling headphones. They've got standardized judging scoring sheets with this verbiage on there to remind them, and then they can submit it and they can phone it into cage side when it's over. Doesn't delay anything. That's my personal opinion. I'm sticking to it, and you can argue with me at a future date.